Hey, what's happening? It's Bill Smith. I'm a little bit under the weather, and I think in an earlier video I called Rod Rosenstein Rob, and I've been making a couple other errors like that. So if you've caught a couple of them, please correct them in the comments. Otherwise, just roll with me. It's kind of a lot. Some of this stuff is a lot to take in. It's the first time I've read about some of it. So today the big stories on the Drudge Report are about the Mueller investigation starting to run down. And then I just was talking about John Kerry, and he popped up again. So this guy is a nobody, and I can't figure out. Well, I mean, I know why. We all know why he's around. He's a deep state shill. He's a puppet. He's part of the problem that we're trying to clean up. But the headline is Kerry quietly seeking to salvage Iran deal he helped craft. So the Trump administration has set a May 12th deadline, I guess, for issuing their statement on whether or not we're going to stay inside of the Iran nuclear deal or not. And everything looks like we're not. It looks like we're going to step out of it and redo it. There's some things that have come to light about nuclear plants, Iranian nuclear plants in northern Syria. Parts of Uranium 1 going through Iran and ending up in Syria for that program. So there's lots of things to be kind of kept in motion. The thing that I've been worried about is the Israeli strikes in Syria. It doesn't look like we have control of that, and it's easy to confuse that with what we, meaning the Trump administration, is out to accomplish. So, I think it's important to look at that through the lens of what we have to do versus what we can say we're doing. And then we got this guy to deal with, so the John Kerry guy's popping up. Okay, so he's talking to the Iranians, speaking with an Iranian official. And he's trying to discuss ways to preserve the pact limiting Iran's nuclear weapons program, which looks like it's really meant to arm Iran, So it goes on to say that Kerry has been on an aggressive yet stealthy mission, using his deep list of contacts gleaned during his time as a top U.S. diplomat to try to apply pressure to the Trump administration from outside in an attempt to preserve it. So he's trying to preserve the Iran nuclear deal. Now, what kind of got my interest down here was there's this picture of Netanyahu, right? This is the prime minister. This is like the president of Israel. And there's this guy behind him. And I have seen this before. I've seen this picture, but I didn't know who it was. Well, it turns out that this is the founder of modern-day Zionism, which I've been talking about. His name is Theodor Herzl. He's considered the founder of the modern Zionist movement. In his 1896 book, Der Judenstaat, he envisioned the founding of a future independent Jewish state during the 20th century, which came to pass, about 50 years later. I found this to be very interesting. So I'll leave the links here. You can come read about Zionism, at least as far as Wikipedia states it. So I was reading about this Der Judenstaat, and it had some really interesting stuff. His take on the Jewish position in the world was interesting. It was written in German and published in Austria. And where was it that It says, this is a summary. After centuries of various restrictions, hostilities, and frequent pogroms, the Jews of Europe have been reduced to living in ghettos. The higher class is forced to deal with angry mobs and so experiences a great deal of discomfort. The lower class lives in despair. Middle-class professionals are distrusted, and the statement, "Don't buy from Jews," causes much anxiety among Jewish people. It is reasonable to assume that the Jews will not be left in peace. Neither a change in the feelings of non-Jews nor a movement to merge into the surrounds of Europe offers much hope to the Jewish people. Okay, so he's basically saying wherever the Jews go, people don't like them. There's no explanation of why that is, and why it happens everywhere they go, en masse across different populations, but he does go on to talk about this. Now, this is the part I found interesting. This is a quote, okay? So this is the founder of Zionism. This is his quote. He says, the Jewish question, okay, the JQ, persists wherever Jews live in appreciable numbers. Okay, so right there he's saying wherever there's enough of them to establish their own little group, their own little neighborhood, wherever they can get a cultural foothold, where they don't have to integrate, wherever they can amass themselves and get a cultural foothold. You get it? That's the first sentence. He says the Jewish question will persist wherever they live in appreciable numbers. So wherever their culture can get a foothold, the Jewish question will come up. He goes on to say, wherever it does not exist, it is brought in together with the Jewish immigrants. So he's saying, if it doesn't exist somewhere, if no one's ever heard of it, if no one's ever had a problem with the Jews, they will have a problem once the Jews show up. This is the founder of Zionism, Theodor Herzl. This is his own words. He goes on to say, we are naturally drawn into those places where we are not persecuted, meaning places where Jews have never been. Okay? And our appearance there gives rise to persecution. That's his second point. Wherever it doesn't exist, it will be brought in with Jewish immigrants. You get it? So basically, he's admitting, straight up, we're going to be, based on the way our culture's set up and the way we behave, as a group, people are going to hate us. Even if they don't know who we are. So that takes the racism part out of it, and I think it undermines and neutralizes the anti-Semitism conversation. Because the founder of the movement is admitting its behavior. People just don't like our culture, and wherever we go, people are going to end up revolting against us. All right. So this is the rest of his quote. He says, this is the case, and will inevitably be so, everywhere, even in highly civilized countries. See, for instance, France, so long as the Jewish question is not solved on the political level. So I thought that people like Adolf Hitler, I thought that's where the Jewish question came from. But it turns out people were asking this question far before that. This is the turn of the century, back in the 1800s. And this is Theodor Herzl, the founder of modern Zionism, which led to the formation of Israel. Okay, now there's some interesting stuff in here too. So it goes on to say that, so he pitched this to the bankers, the Rothschilds, right? Said Herzl opposed the efforts already made by Zionist groups to settle Jews in Ottoman-controlled Palestine by arguing that important experiments in colonization have been made, though on the mistaken principle of a gradual infiltration of Jews. An infiltration is bound to end badly. It continues until the inevitable moment when the native population feels itself threatened and forces the government to stop a further influx of Jews. Immigration is consequently futile unless we have a sovereign right to continue such immigration. Now, what does that sound like? I mean, that sounds like the 1965 or whatever Immigration Act. That's what that sounds like. That sounds like now where we can't even enforce our border. That's what that sounds like. There's a sovereign right inside the judiciary, the judgment system inside of a country, the laws that enable all of this. And once that happens, there's no way to stop it. And that's what he's saying right here. All right. Now, to back up on this thing, he says that there were efforts. This is in 1896, okay? 1896. And he is saying that he opposes the efforts already made by Zionist groups to settle Jews in Ottoman-controlled Palestine, which is exactly where Israel's at. That's exactly what happened. And this is in 1896. All right, so a little bit after that, you get the Federal Reserve in 1913, and then you get World War I 6 months later, July 1914. You get it? You get how quick this stuff works once you get it all in motion? And then you get the defeat of the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottoman Empire was Turkey. Okay? This is Turkey, and it occupied a great deal of more territory. So it basically consumed the Middle East. And this is where Israel's at now. So during World War I, we defeated the Ottoman Empire as well. So the Turks, using the Young Turk Revolution, with a 2-stage electoral system under the Ottoman Parliament. So that's what they moved to. But they used the Young Turk Revolution to defeat the Ottoman Empire during the World War I, I guess. And this is linked to everything. This is linked to everything in the Middle East. And this is what set up the modern Middle East layout. This is what changed the map into all the countries you have now, like Jordan, Iraq, I think. So, interesting stuff if you didn't know about it. And this is what ended it. It's the Treaty of Lausanne, I guess. And this set the borders of modern-day Turkey. All right, so back to this Theodor Herzl guy, the founder of modern Zionism. So in the book, it concludes, "Therefore I believe that a wondrous generation of Jews will spring into existence. The Maccabeans will rise again. Let me repeat once more my opening words. The Jews who wish for a state will have it." Okay, and then what he did was he lobbied for legal sanction from the Ottoman authorities. So this is before the Ottoman authorities were defeated. He was out basically trying to get the governments to recognize them rather than the West Bank kind of thing where they just invade. You know, where they only sell to Jews, and then all the Jews go there and then they buy up land from people, and that's another form of displacement. And they use that today. That's what's happening in the West Bank. But he was able, and then whatever. I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. That's it for now. I mean, this is a kind of an eye-opener for me. I didn't understand all this stuff this deep. You know, like Zionism isn't really something that we talk about very often. It's clearly in the open. It's not a racist term. It was founded by people that are well documented. It's on Wikipedia. So I think that we should talk about this more because I don't think most people know about this stuff. I think most people just assume that we all get along with each other. And it's not true. You know, it's not. And there's a certain group of people that don't want us to. I want to get along. I want there to be peace. And until we get a hold of this, until I think people understand this on a bigger scale, it's going to be harder to shift this. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. This is Bill Smith. Please like and subscribe if you want. Until next time, thanks for watching.